Welcome the Lord's chosen. Pay close attention to who stays calm when the room gets noisy. That's where the real authority usually sits. There's something quietly unsettling about a person who doesn't flinch when they're criticized, doubted, or openly opposed. No long explanations, no emotional speeches, no public meltdowns disguised as being real, just composure. And whether people admit it or not, that composure gets talked about. It travels. It becomes a topic when you're not in the room. Because in a world addicted to reaction, restraint looks suspiciously like power. Here's a fact most people overlook. Studies in social psychology have shown that observers tend to assign higher status and intelligence to individuals who remain calm under social attack, even when they don't win the argument. Translation: the person who reacts the least is often judged as the one with the most control. That's not motivational fluff. That's how human perception actually works. We are wired to respect stability more than volume. And this is where things get interesting. When people start talking about how well you deal with haters, critics, and opposition, it's rarely about your words. It's about what you didn't do. You didn't scramble. You didn't spiral. You didn't turn every comment into a courtroom defense. You let others exhaust themselves while you stayed structurally intact. That kind of behavior breaks expectations. Humans don't know what to do with someone who refuses to play the emotional game they were invited into. There's also a slightly humorous truth hiding in all of this. Nothing confuses a hater more than realizing they're doing cardio while you're sitting down. They show up with spreadsheets of resentment, rehearsed speeches, and dramatic pauses, and you respond with progress, silence, or an unbothered expression that says, "Is that it?" It's not arrogance, it's economy. You don't overspend energy where there's no return. This isn't about being untouchable. It's about being unhookable. It's about understanding that not every challenge deserves a response. Not every critic deserves clarification, and not every opinion deserves rent-free space in your head. When people start whispering about how well you handle opposition, what they're really noticing is discipline, emotional discipline, psychological discipline, strategic discipline. And once that reputation forms, things shift. The noise doesn't stop, but it loses authority. The attacks don't disappear, but they lose weight. Because the moment people realize they can't control you through reaction, they're forced to sit with something far more uncomfortable, their own lack of it. That's what this is really about. Not image, not ego. Control. Number one, you don't rush to prove innocence because you understand power dynamics. Most people think defending yourself is a sign of strength. It isn't. It's a reflex. And reflexes usually belong to people who feel cornered. When someone throws an accusation, a rumor, or a sideways comment your way, the instinct to immediately explain comes from fear of losing status. You don't have that problem. You understand something most people don't. The moment you rush to clear your name, you've already accepted the other person as a judge. You've placed them above you, even if you didn't mean to. You know that power doesn't beg for understanding. It allows time to do the sorting. When you stay calm and don't scramble to fix the narrative, something interesting happens. The room starts watching the other person instead. Their tone gets sharper. Their story gets longer. Their need for attention grows louder. And without you saying a word, people start sensing imbalance. They feel who's grounded and who's grasping. This isn't about ego, it's about structure. You know that truth doesn't need urgency. Lies do. False narratives require constant maintenance, emotional energy, and reinforcement. Real integrity doesn't. So you let accusations sit. You let people talk. You let silence stretch long enough for discomfort to expose motives. That's not avoidance. That's positioning. People notice this about you because it's rare. Most people over-explain. They bring receipts no one asked for. They argue with people who were never confused in the first place. You don't do that. You understand that not every misunderstanding deserves correction, and not every opinion deserves access to you. There's also restraint in knowing when clarification actually helps, and when it only feeds chaos. You don't confuse being misunderstood with being defeated. Sometimes being misunderstood is simply the cost of not lowering yourself into unnecessary conflict. You're willing to pay that cost because you see the long game. Over time, this creates a reputation. People start saying you're unshakable, not because nothing touches you, but because nothing controls you. You decide when to speak and when to let events speak for you. And that decision alone separates authority from insecurity. That's why your calm feels heavy. It's not silence for show. It's silence backed by awareness. Number 2, you treat hatred as data, not trauma. Most people experience hate as a personal attack. It hits the ego, stirs emotions, and turns into a story they carry around. You don't do that. You separate the feeling from the information. When criticism or hostility comes your way, you don't immediately ask, "Why are they doing this to me?" You quietly observe what's being said, who's saying it, and what moment it showed up in. That shift alone changes everything. What breaks most people becomes raw material for you. You understand that hate is rarely random. It spikes when something is changing. It increases when visibility grows. It shows up when progress threatens someone's comfort. Instead of taking it as a verdict on your worth, you treat it like a signal. You notice patterns. You notice timing. You notice repetition. That awareness gives you leverage, not wounds. This doesn't mean you're numb. You feel things like anyone else. The difference is that you don't let emotion decide meaning. You don't hand critics the power to define your inner state. You process privately, then extract what's useful. If there's truth buried inside the criticism, you take it without swallowing the poison. If there isn't, you discard it without drama. That level of discernment is rare, and people sense it. Others talk about how you don't spiral. You don't turn opposition into an identity. You don't announce how hurt you are or perform resilience for sympathy. You keep your center intact. While others relive the same insult over and over, you've already moved on with the information you needed. There's something deeply unsettling to people who attack you when they realize their words didn't land where they intended. They expected damage. They got distance. They expected reaction. They got analysis. That quiet shift in power is why your critics often become louder while you become quieter. Over time, this approach sharpens you. You start seeing ahead of situations before they fully unfold. You can predict resistance before it arrives. You recognize when you've outgrown a room because the noise suddenly increases. What others experience as pain, you experience as feedback. That's why people talk. They don't understand how you stay composed, but they notice that every wave of hate somehow leaves you clearer, stronger, and more precise than before. That's not toughness. That's intelligence applied to emotion. Number 3, you don't argue with distorted versions of yourself. Most people think defending themselves means confronting every accusation, every exaggeration, every distorted opinion. You don't fall for that trap. You know that critics rarely attack the real you. They attack a version they've created in their minds, a version easier to criticize, easier to devalue, easier to control. Engaging with that version is a waste of energy. It's like playing chess against a shadow. You don't do it because you understand the difference between reality and projection. When someone misrepresents you, most people react instantly. They feel compelled to correct the record, to justify every choice, to prove that they are, in fact, the person they truly are. You don't. You let the misrepresentation exist without your consent. That restraint is not passive, it's strategic. People around you notice that you refuse to be dragged into battles over perception. They see that the real you remains untouchable because you never confirm or argue against the caricature. This approach gives you control over your energy and your influence. While others get tangled in misunderstandings and exaggerations, you conserve clarity and focus. You allow time to do the work that explanations never could. Eventually, the real picture becomes obvious, not because you screamed it louder, but because your consistency leaves no room for shadows to hold sway. There's also a psychological effect on those who try to distort you. They start chasing their own narrative, reacting to the fact that you won't feed it. Frustration grows on their side while you remain unshaken. Observers notice the contrast immediately. One person consumed by perception, the other operating from truth. That contrast creates subtle power. By refusing to argue with distorted versions, you make a statement louder than words ever could. You signal that you are self-contained, self-directed, and impervious to manipulation through misrepresentation. This is what makes your handling of critics feel so effortless. It's not about ignoring reality, it's about refusing to legitimize false realities. That discipline is rare, and people can't help but talk about it. They sense a kind of control that most spend their whole lives chasing, but never understand. Number 4, you never borrow the enemy's tone. When people attack, most of us unconsciously mirror them. If they're angry, we get defensive. If they're sarcastic, we snap back with sarcasm. If they're loud, we shout. It's human nature, but it's also a trap. Borrowing their tone hands them control over your emotional state. You don't fall for it. You maintain your own energy, your own rhythm, your own voice. That choice, though subtle, is immediately noticeable. People sense it before they can name it, and that quiet authority makes others uneasy. You understand that tone carries power. When someone tries to provoke you, they're testing your boundaries, hoping to get a reaction that validates their narrative. You don't give it to them. You respond in your own measured way, or sometimes not at all. That refusal forces the other side to escalate or expose themselves. Their energy becomes unproductive, even chaotic, while you remain steady. Observers notice the imbalance. They see the contrast between reactive chaos and controlled calm, and it builds your reputation. This isn't about politeness or restraint as a performance. It's about control. You know that when you adopt someone else's tone, even subtly, you enter their battlefield. You fight on their terms. By keeping your own tone, you dictate the rules without saying a word. Your energy defines the space. It tells everyone, consciously or not, that you are not swayed by manipulation, fear, or anger. There's also a psychological edge here. Critics expect emotional validation. They expect you to mirror them because that is what most people do. When you don't, it breaks their framework. They feel their power slipping. They become louder, sharper, more frantic, while you remain a fixed point. That makes your presence magnetic and unsettling at the same time. Over time, refusing to borrow the enemy's tone creates an invisible aura. People talk about it because they feel it before they understand it. You don't just handle opposition, you redefine how it interacts with you. And in doing so, you turn what could be conflict into subtle influence. That's why observers consistently notice how different you are, how untouchable you appear, and why critics often burn themselves out while you stay untethered. Number 5, you don't confuse visibility with importance. Most people mistake noise for significance. A comment, a critique, or even an attack becomes important simply because it's loud, public, or persistent. You don't fall into that trap. You understand that visibility doesn't equal weight. Just because someone is talking doesn't mean their words carry truth, power, or influence over you. That distinction is subtle, but it separates those who are reactive from those who are untouchable. You watch as people around you get drawn into arguments, explanations, and digital debates, treating every opinion like a referendum on their worth. You stay detached. You don't let the sheer volume of attention or hatred dictate your energy. People notice this immediately. There's a quiet, almost magnetic authority in someone who refuses to let public clamor become a personal battle. Your focus isn't on appearing right or winning approval. It's on actual impact and results. This perspective gives you freedom. While others are busy playing whack-a-mole with every critic, you allocate energy to things that move you forward. You recognize the difference between fleeting opinions and lasting influence. A loud hater or critic may dominate a room or feed the algorithm, but they don't touch the work, the craft, or the life you're building. You keep your priorities in the real realm, where results matter more than perception. There's also an effect on your environment. People start seeing that while others are frantically chasing validation from outside, you operate from a place of internal authority. That contrast makes you memorable. It forces observers to reevaluate what really deserves attention. They begin to understand that your calm, your restraint, and your focus are not signs of ignorance. They're signs of mastery. By refusing to inflate minor opposition into importance, you create a space where your energy is reserved for growth, strategy, and long-term wins. Over time, this behavior builds a reputation that is heavier than any single reaction could. People talk about you because they notice that your life runs on principles, not applause. And that quiet detachment from noise is what sets you apart in a world obsessed with who shouts the loudest. Number 6, you allow people to misunderstand you on purpose. Most people panic when they're misunderstood. They scramble to explain, clarify, and justify themselves, as if every opinion about them has to match reality. You don't. You understand that being fully understood by everyone is neither possible nor necessary. Sometimes letting people misinterpret you becomes a tool, not a problem. By allowing misunderstanding, you filter your world. The people who misread you often remove themselves from your path, while the ones who actually see you stay close. That selective visibility is more valuable than any endorsement or approval. This isn't about playing mind games. It's about energy management and clarity of focus. You know that every explanation spent correcting someone else's perception is energy diverted from building your vision, your craft, or your influence. People notice this. They see someone who doesn't bend to the weight of opinion, who doesn't chase validation or consensus, and it makes others uneasy. It also creates curiosity, intrigue, and a subtle magnetic pull. People talk about you not because you make grand gestures, but because your presence makes them think, who exactly is this, and why aren't they like everyone else? There's also an undeniable advantage in letting misunderstanding exist. Critics and naysayers often operate under the illusion that they've figured you out. They expend energy on assumptions that may be completely wrong, while you continue unaffected, moving forward with clarity and purpose. You turn their misconceptions into your camouflage. Their noise exists, but it doesn't interfere with your trajectory. Over time, this habit builds a reputation that feels larger than life. People notice that you are selective with your explanations, precise with your attention, and untethered from the need to be universally validated. That combination of intentional opacity and unshakable presence creates an aura few can define, but many feel. You become someone who is observed more than corrected, admired more than understood, and that distinction is what separates you from the reactive masses. Misunderstanding becomes your silent ally, and your composure becomes your loudest statement. Number 7, you don't weaponize victimhood to gain sympathy. Most people believe that showing pain or outrage will earn them respect or attention. They perform suffering, hoping it will validate their position or force others to acknowledge injustice. You don't play that game. You understand that turning pain into currency is a trap, not a strategy. When something happens that could provoke anger, resentment, or hurt, you handle it privately or strategically, not theatrically. That restraint is immediately noticeable to anyone paying attention. It signals self-ownership and emotional independence, and people can't help but respect it. You know that weaponizing victimhood always puts someone else in charge of your narrative. The moment you use outrage or hurt to manipulate perception, you hand control of your identity to the audience. You refuse to do that. You process events internally, extract what's useful, and move forward. That's what makes your presence feel different. Critics, haters, and observers alike notice that you never collapse under pressure, complain for attention, or perform anguish. Your life operates on cause and effect, not on public approval or sympathy. There's a subtle power in this approach. When others are busy broadcasting their pain, you're busy building, creating, or executing. The contrast becomes stark. People who rely on outrage or sympathy for influence appear weak, erratic, or dependent, while your composed handling of adversity makes your authority feel absolute without a single word. It's the quiet dominance of someone who refuses to let emotional manipulation dictate their worth or trajectory. Over time, this behavior shapes your reputation. People talk about you because you handle wrongdoing, criticism, and opposition in a way that feels untouchable yet grounded. You don't need applause for resilience, validation for endurance, or an audience for reaction. Your self-worth comes from within, and that inner stability radiates outward. Critics may try, but they can't manipulate your narrative because they're not in charge of it. Your refusal to weaponize victimhood is a form of invisible power, one that forces others to respect boundaries, take notice, and ultimately understand that your strength isn't performative. It's fundamental. Number 8. You understand that criticism often reveals aspiration. Most people take criticism personally, seeing it as a judgment on their worth, their ability, or their character. You don't. You know that when someone attacks you, it's rarely about you at all. It's about them, what they want, what they envy, what they can't achieve, or what they're afraid you're capable of. Critics often reveal more about themselves than they do about you. Recognizing this shifts the power entirely. Instead of feeling wounded, you read it like a map, learning who feels threatened by your presence and why. This perspective turns every attack into a lesson. The louder or sharper the criticism, the clearer the signal that you're operating on a level someone else aspires to reach. While most people respond with defensiveness, insecurity, or anger, you respond with observation. You watch the patterns, the timing, and the intensity. You see ambition, insecurity, or fear disguised as hostility. That insight allows you to move smarter, not harder, in a world where others are busy burning energy proving themselves right. There's also a psychological advantage here. People who try to tear you down are often invested in their own narrative, expecting you to stumble under the weight of their opinion. When you remain unshaken, it unsettles them. Their energy becomes frantic, reactive, and self-defeating while you remain grounded, learning from the signals they unknowingly send. That imbalance is noticeable to anyone paying attention. Observers see someone in control, someone who doesn't flinch at opposition, and that perception alone builds respect and authority. You don't dismiss criticism, you decode it. You extract what's useful, leave behind what's irrelevant, and move forward without wasting time on ego battles. That makes your trajectory smoother and your strategy sharper. Over time, people talk about you because Your ability to handle opposition isn't just reactionary, it's insightful. You turn threats into information, envy into data, and attacks into intelligence. That's why critics burn energy while you grow, and why people can't help but notice that your calm isn't weakness. It's a reflection of deeper understanding and mastery. Number 9. You never explain your long-term vision to short-term thinkers. Most people feel the need to justify their actions, share their plans, and make sure everyone around them understands their journey. You don't. You understand that not everyone is capable of seeing beyond the immediate, and that trying to explain long-term vision to someone stuck in short-term thinking is not only pointless, it's dangerous. Short-term thinkers are easily distracted, quick to judge, and prone to misunderstanding. Giving them access to your strategy often creates unnecessary resistance, criticism, or confusion. You stay quiet, letting results reveal your direction instead of words. This restraint immediately sets you apart. While others scramble to convince, persuade, or defend, you move with clarity and purpose. You let time do the explaining. People begin to notice patterns in your life, consistency, progress, and precision that words could never communicate effectively. Observers start understanding that your focus isn't on approval, it's on execution. That difference creates a subtle form of authority. You're not loud or defensive, yet your trajectory becomes obvious, and that visibility feels natural, not forced. There's also a psychological advantage in this approach. When critics or skeptics attempt to interfere, they find they are operating on incomplete information. They judge what they see, not what you are building. Their predictions fail. Their criticisms miss the mark. Meanwhile, your energy stays directed at what matters most, free from the distractions of validation or explanation. That makes your work feel heavier, your presence more grounded, and your influence more enduring. Over time, your silence about the details of your vision becomes a signature. People talk about how you operate without broadcasting every move, how your results speak louder than your explanations, and how you create forward motion in a world obsessed with immediate understanding. You've learned that the long game doesn't need spectators, it only needs execution. That discipline, patience, and confidence in your own path separate you from the reactive masses. And it's one of the most understated yet powerful ways you handle critics, opposition, and doubt. Number 10. You refuse to outsource your self-worth to public opinion. Most people tie their value to applause, validation, and approval from others. They live in a constant loop of checking likes, reading comments, and seeking reassurance that they are seen as competent, worthy, or successful. You don't. You've built a foundation of self-worth that is internal, unshakable, and independent of external noise. That's why people notice how calm, untethered, and grounded you appear in the face of criticism, hate, or doubt. Your sense of value doesn't fluctuate with someone else's perception, and that distinction makes you quietly formidable. When critics or haters attempt to shake you, they are essentially trying to reprogram your internal scale of worth. Most people hand over that control willingly, reacting emotionally, over-explaining or performing defensiveness. You don't. You process external judgments without letting them interfere with your self-assessment. You extract what is useful if there's a lesson hidden in the critique, but you discard everything else without drama. That approach creates a silent, almost magnetic authority. People can feel that you are operating from a place of certainty, and it makes them take notice even if they can't fully articulate why. This mindset also protects your energy. When your self-worth is internal, you don't need to argue, justify, or prove yourself constantly. You are free to focus on building, creating, and executing without the distraction of needing approval. Critics grow frustrated because they realize they cannot manipulate you through their opinions. Their efforts to provoke or unsettle you fail, and that failure becomes visible to everyone watching. Over time, your refusal to outsource your self-worth builds a reputation. People talk about you because they sense that your composure isn't performance. It's genuine. Your confidence isn't fragile. It's rooted in self-knowledge, discipline, and internal validation. That independence separates you from the reactive masses. It's why observers, critics, and even opponents can't seem to penetrate the calm, and why your influence and authority quietly, powerfully expand without ever needing external reinforcement. Number 11. You don't need enemies to feel important. Most people secretly rely on opposition to define themselves. They need someone to challenge, criticize, or compete with in order to feel alive, relevant, or validated. You don't. You understand that your worth, your progress, and your energy come from within, not from the resistance you face. That makes your approach to critics, haters, and competitors completely different from everyone else's. People notice it immediately, because while others are constantly stirred by conflict, you operate from calm autonomy. You don't create enemies to feel alive, and that absence of dependency itself commands respect. When people attack or oppose you, their attempts at significance often fall flat because you are not measuring your value by their reactions. You observe, assess, and move forward without needing to prove anything. That ability to stay untethered turns opposition into something almost irrelevant. Critics expect that their attacks will trigger a response that confirms their power, but when it doesn't, they look smaller, desperate, and ultimately ineffective. Observers notice this imbalance and start talking about how your presence seems almost untouchable. This approach also liberates your energy. You don't waste time strategizing how to respond to every jab, manipulate every perception, or win in the eyes of detractors. Instead, you focus entirely on creation, execution, and progress. You are not performing for anyone or proving yourself through conflict. That freedom is rare, and it amplifies your influence because people sense that you are moving with purpose rather than reacting to distraction. Over time, this behavior becomes a defining trait. People talk about you because you operate above the petty need for enemies or drama. Your power doesn't depend on opposition. It exists inherently, quietly, and efficiently. By refusing to need enemies to feel important, you signal a kind of authority that others can feel but can't touch. It's a magnetic combination of independence, discipline, and calm dominance that sets you apart in a world addicted to reaction, proving that true influence comes from self-sufficiency, not external battles. Number 12. You know when disengagement is strategy, not avoidance. Most people mistake stepping back as weakness. They assume that when someone doesn't respond to criticism, opposition, or provocation, they are scared, insecure, or incapable. You don't play by that rule. You understand the difference between avoidance and strategy. Disengagement can be a deliberate, powerful choice. It allows you to conserve energy, observe clearly, and let situations unfold in a way that benefits you, rather than reacting impulsively to noise or pressure. That awareness alone sets you apart, and people can sense it even when you say nothing. When critics or haters are loud, most people feel compelled to respond. They argue, explain, or justify themselves in real time, often escalating the situation unnecessarily. You don't. You step back not out of fear, but out of calculation. By disengaging, you force others to operate without your emotional energy, without your immediate reaction, and without giving their attacks life. Silence becomes a tool. It exposes desperation, impatience, and weakness in the other party, while you remain grounded, measured, and entirely in control of your own narrative. Observers notice this difference instinctively. There's also a psychological advantage to this kind of disengagement. People expect engagement. They expect reactions. When you withhold them, it creates uncertainty and even obsession. Critics are left with their own noise, circling endlessly without traction. Meanwhile, you maintain clarity, focus, and momentum on what truly matters: your growth, your vision, and your influence. That's the kind of power that doesn't scream, yet dominates the space quietly. Over time, this strategic disengagement builds your reputation. People talk about you because they see someone who moves above petty conflict, someone who chooses battles with precision, and someone who understands timing on a level most never do. They realize that your calm is not ignorance, your silence is not fear, and your distance is not weakness, it's control. By knowing when to step back and when to act, you turn what looks like absence into influence, proving that true power often comes from restraint rather than reaction. Number 13, you let consistency outlast commentary. Most people react to criticism, gossip, or commentary as if every word carries equal weight. They argue, defend, or post explanations, feeding the noise and giving it life. You don't. You understand that consistency over time outweighs the loudest commentary. Your actions, habits, and results speak louder than opinions ever could. People notice this immediately because while others are busy chasing attention, defending reputation, or proving themselves, you are quietly moving forward, building and delivering. That kind of persistent, steady energy is magnetic, unsettling, and unforgettable. You understand that critics, haters, and doubters thrive on immediate reactions. They expect emotional responses, explanations, or public acknowledgement. When you don't give them these things, they are left spinning in their own assumptions while you continue executing. Over time, the contrast becomes clear. Commentary fluctuates, energy burns out, and narratives collapse, but your consistency remains unshaken. Observers notice this disparity, and it creates a silent authority that words could never match. Consistency also signals discipline and vision. It shows that you are not reactive to every attack or opinion, but are driven by a deeper purpose that doesn't require validation. People around you start seeing a pattern. Your achievements, behavior, and responses are steady, deliberate, and purposeful. That reliability makes your influence heavier, your reputation more solid, and your presence more commanding. It's the kind of authority that doesn't demand attention, yet everyone pays it unconsciously. There's also a psychological effect on those who attempt to undermine you. When they realize that their commentary fades while your actions remain constant, their energy turns to frustration and confusion. They try harder, overcompensate, and eventually exhaust themselves. Meanwhile, your steady course continues unaffected, letting time itself reveal who is disciplined, capable, and real. By letting consistency outlast commentary, you create a quiet power few can challenge. People talk about you because they notice that your life isn't controlled by noise, reactions, or temporary judgments. It is defined by deliberate, persistent action. That is the kind of influence that leaves critics fading in the background while your presence steadily commands attention. Number 14. You let time reveal what words cannot. Most people feel the pressure to explain themselves, justify every decision, and respond immediately to criticism. They believe that if they don't clarify, their reputation will suffer. You don't operate that way. You understand that time is a far stronger ally than any argument, post, or public explanation. You let events unfold, actions accumulate, and results speak for themselves. Over time, what you've built, endured, and achieved becomes undeniable, while words, heated, emotional, or defensive, fade into noise. People notice this patience, and it creates a quiet authority that others can't manufacture. When someone attacks you, most would react, hoping to fix perception or control the narrative. You don't. You step back, maintain composure, and allow life itself to demonstrate the truth. This approach isn't passive, it's deliberate. Every action, every choice, and every consistent behavior compounds into evidence of your integrity, skill, and resilience. Critics may shout, rumors may spread, and opinions may circulate. But when the dust settles, your reality stands clearly above all of it. Observers sense this difference instinctively. They see someone untouchable not because they never face opposition, but because opposition never derails them. There's also a strategic advantage to this method. People expect reactions, immediate clarifications, or emotional displays. When you withhold them, frustration grows on their side. They try harder to provoke, attack, or control the narrative, while you continue unaffected. Over time, this forces critics and haters to either adapt, withdraw, or expose their own limitations. Meanwhile, your calm, consistent presence becomes the standard by which others are measured. By letting time reveal what words cannot, you demonstrate a rare form of mastery. You show that authority doesn't need constant validation, and that true power isn't about proving yourself in the moment. It's about building, enduring, and allowing results to speak louder than any argument ever could. People talk about you because they recognize this patience as strength, and in a world addicted to noise, that quiet certainty is both magnetic and unstoppable. When you look at how someone handles critics, haters, and opposition, it's never just about the words they say. It's about the energy they maintain, the choices they make, and the discipline they uphold when chaos surrounds them. The truly powerful don't scramble to explain themselves, don't chase validation, and don't react to noise. They observe, analyze, and act with precision. They let results, consistency, and time speak for them. Every insult, rumor, or sideways attack becomes an opportunity, not for drama, but for insight, strategy, and growth. That's why people notice them, talk about them, and even fear them in subtle ways, because their power is quiet, deliberate, and unshakable. This is a level of mastery most never reach. It's about seeing beyond the surface, understanding human behavior, and choosing your responses with surgical precision. It's refusing to be dragged into chaos, turning criticism into intelligence, and letting your calm and consistency do the talking. When you operate like this, haters burn energy while you gain clarity. Critics overreact while you stay steady. And the world gradually realizes that you're untouchable, not because you're distant or arrogant, but because your discipline, strategy, and composure are simply on another level. If you've been paying attention, you can see that dealing with opposition isn't about confrontation. It's about control, patience, and inner authority. It's about being so confident in your path that neither noise nor negativity can derail you. That's what makes the chosen ones stand out. That's what makes them unforgettable. And that's the lesson to take away. Mastery over others starts with mastery over yourself. If this resonated with you, don't forget to hit that subscribe button to join the movement. Give this video a like if it inspired you. Comment below to share your thoughts, and share it with anyone who needs to see this today. Your energy and attention fuel content that truly matters. Stay disciplined, stay strategic, and keep letting your actions speak louder than words. Stay blessed always.